How far people get in the learning? Did anyone finish the learning? Yeah, it's a lot of material every week.
Rabbi, there's one question that we struggle with.
Yeah.
Is when the father has the Moel do it for him, they seem to kind of like be a little unclear. Is he actually making him the shliach? There seems to be a disagreement here. Whether it seems like you're making your shliach.
Yeah, 100%.
But there's one opinion that says you shouldn't do that.
That opinion of the shach, as we're going to talk about that, is specifically if you're a mohel. So if you are able to the Milah and you're qualified, they have that qualification that you really could do it properly, then you should do it.
The father still gets as full of mitzvah as if he did it himself, right?
But there's an opinion of the shach that says if you're a qualified mohel, you really should do it yourself.
But that's only a singular opinion according to this. Most opinions said that the father should do it anytime. It's a mitzvah l'chatchila for the father to do it.
It's definitely a mitzvah l'chatchila of the father to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, why should we be able to appoint a shliach?
That's the whole question that the Tzurba and the Ramah are dealing with.
Says the Yosef. He said maybe the father will make a mistake.
Right. It seems to be a question of how qualified you are to do it.
But all the opinions that we've learned in here, he's the only one who says that.
Am I being recorded? This is on? Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry, Lenny, you want to finish saying?
All the opinions, he's the only one who says that. I mean, I've read this through now, and most opinions do say that the father has to do it.
The father should do it. The question is, that seems to be the general. We're going to talk about that. So let's go through the different points. First, I just wanted to point out, I thought it was very interesting. There are two different reasons given for Milah. The Chinuch, just giving a summary, the Chinuch says the reason is for distinctiveness, that there should be a mark on a Jew to show that they're different. They're a Jewish male, not a non-Jewish male. And the Rambam's opinion is that it's more of a moral. It's a moral, mark in the sense that we're trying to actually minimize sexual pleasure, and it's supposed to be, somewhat, according to the Rambam and Avuchim, that literally removing the foreskin actually decreases sexual satisfaction by removing the foreskin. I actually Googled that to see if that was any basis in science. It's hard to when you Google the role of the foreskin, and you get a lot of random things. So you got a lot of stuff. Right. So, there were articles that did talk about that, and there were scientific studies that seemed to question whether or not it's accurate. But what the Rambam is saying was mentioned that there is a theory that it does decrease sexual satisfaction. Okay, so that's point number one, is the two different reasons of why we do Milah. Secondly, I thought it was interesting that the Rambam talks about, is a machlokas Rambam Ravid, whether or not if you go a day or a lifetime without Milah, whether or not you're obligating kares. The Rambam says the chi of kares, or the isser kares, doesn't come until one's death. I mean, you have your whole lifetime where you're violating an isser, but kares doesn't come until you die, not having been circumcised. The Ravid seems to say every day you're living with an isser kares on your head. I was listening to a podcast, Headlines, where Rabbi Goldstein of the Poway Chabad was quoted that he went on some mission recently with Russian Jews. It was a Kiruv program, and he was telling that there were two boys on this mission who got circumcised that day. Like they were rispal, they were inspired, and they had Milah that day. And I remember thinking when I was listening to the podcast, why did they have to do it that day? Maybe they'll let them sleep on it. Maybe give them a week, let them go home to their parents or whatever. But maybe according to this idea of the Ravid, that there might be a looming Isser Kares for every day that you're not Mal. Maybe that's why when we do find people who are willing to have Milah, so we do it right away.
The Russian the Soviet expatriates, this was a big issue. Even I were talking about it because the majority of them did not have Milah because of the restrictions of the Soviet Union.
Right.
And that's, by the way, the name Bris Avraham, that's why they started the name Bris Avraham. That's where it came from.
Beautiful. So I do know that there one time my 8 years here, there was someone brought to my attention, an adult who might need Milah, and I happen to know a urologist in Inglewood who I'm friendly with, and he said he would clear his schedule to help me out if we needed it. So the point is that there does seem to be an alacrity that comes with when someone's willing to do it. We'll take care of it right away. Okay, a few other interesting things I thought, some from the end of this year, then we'll come back to this point of shlichut. Timing. There's a fasting Aruch HaShulchan which just went off on those who push off the bris milah until later in the day, and we have a conflict of concept of Zrizim Makdim the mitzvah. We try to do things with alacrity earlier in the day to show that we're excited about it, versus the other conflicting value of the Rovam Hadrat HaMelech, that we want to have as many people as possible at our smachot. There's a whole discussion of which of those two principles win. And it seems to be from the sense of poskim that Zrizim Makdim the mitzvahs wins. I know that in my time in Fairland, there have been numerous situations last couple of years where people have really pushed me hard for an afternoon bris. And after seeing the sources inside, I really feel strongly that it really needs to be a really compelling reason to do an afternoon bris, not just because some second, third cousin wants to be there, because the posting all seem to say halachically Zrizim Makdim and the mitzvahs wins in, and the Aruch HaShulchan has very harif words for those who push off for without having a really compelling reason. Another interesting shayla that's come up also, I know, in practical is about sickness. There's a machloket whether or not when a baby is sick, maybe jaundice, the whole discussion of jaundice, and if we got to that part, do we wait not just for the recovery, but recovery plus 7 days? And I never seen the Shulchan Aruch inside, but the Shulchan Aruch says it depends what type of sickness it is. If it's a sickness which is localized, so then we can just wait for the recovery of the localized sickness. If it's a sickness b'chol gufo, so then we would wait for the recovery and then still tack on another 7 days. So there's a whole machloket, and then how do we view jaundice? Because jaundice is in the blood, and the whole bloodstream, is that considered b'chol gufo? Fascinating. These are shaylas that come up, pretty regularly. So that some of the makorot are there to delve in a little bit further. Also, just a couple weeks ago, we had a first Brit Yitzchak. I think for Bennett Schwartz, he had a Brit Yitzchak because his in-laws are Sephardi, and they brought some Zohars for us to read. If anyone was at the Shalom Zachar, they called it a Brit Yitzchak. So I was not familiar with this, the minhag of Brit Yitzchak. Apparently, it's brought down the Machzor Vitri the night before the Brit to have a Su'uda. And I've heard of a Vachnach, I never heard of Brit Yitzchak. So apparently in the footnotes or one of the annotations it says that a Brit Yitzchak is the same thing as a Vachnach. Basically the Zohar talks about that not sleeping the night before the Brit and giving and learning and bringing Talmid Chachamim and bringing children. It's all based on a Zohar. Doesn't mention the children part, just mentions the learning part. The Machzor Vitri mentions Suda, and the Ot Sefer Otzar Brit quotes the minhag that later developed of this idea of a Vachnach, which literally means the night of the 8th. I didn't realize that also. Vachnach is night of 8th. For the non-Yiddish speakers, that might be a chiddush. This notion of having all in the honor of giving kavod to the mitzvah that's going to happen the next day. One other fascinating thing I was not aware of: there's a machloket whether or not you say a shechianu at a brit. So typically, Sfarim do make a shechianu, like the Mechaber, and Ashkenazim we do not make a shechianu. What I didn't know is the language of the Ram. The Rambam says be'artzot Eretz Yisrael, beSuria, whatever, a few other countries. The minhag is to make a shechianu. Therefore, Ashkenazim in Eretz Yisrael do make a shechianu, which I think is also interesting. For an Ashkenaz who might attend a bris in Israel, you might be, hey, Ashkenazim don't make a shechianu, but apparently Ashkenazim in Eretz Yisrael, based on the language of the Rambam, do make a shechianu on a bris. I forget what the reason.
I thought because the Tzara is Yehuda, that the child is suffering some pain, so we don't make it. I think that's the reason given. Because the pain, some pain with the child, we don't make it.
Okay, could be. I didn't really so far should know. So I want to get to the shlichut part. That was the very compelling thing. So first of all, it starts with the shach. The shach basically says if a person is a moel, he says they should not give the kibud of doing the milah to another person. The Ramah in the Darkei Moshe, which was quoted in I think in the Ksos HaChoshen, so the Ramah said, wait a second, we have a concept of shluchus shel adam k'mol Torah. You're allowed to have shlichus by mitzvah. You're allowed to ask someone else to perform the mitzvah for you. So the Ksos HaChoshen quotes this question of the Ramah, and the Ksos basically says that there seems to be a difference between certain mitzvot. He equates Milah to the mitzvah of Kisei Dam. They're definitely a package deal. And he says there's certain mitzvot that you would not be able to have someone else perform them for you. For example, I can have someone build the sukkah for me. I can't have them sit in the sukkah and say, I was giving it, the shliach says I'm giving it for me. Daniel can't sit in the sukkah and say he's giving Rabbi Donath the schar. tefillin. Dan can put on the tefillin and say Rabbi Donuth gets the schar. So there's no hagdara in the Ksos HaChoshen. It doesn't really say, well, what is which mitzvahs can you do shlichut and which mitzvah can you not do shlichut. So the Tosas Rid, which he didn't quote inside, he just quotes in a little box, says that it seems to be the difference is between mitzvot shebegufo and mitzvot that a person is obligated to do. There seems that there's a mitzvah that when it needs to be done with your body, so then you can't have a shliach to do. What's fascinating is here, based on the Hagdara of the Rid, I would have thought that Milah is not a mitzvah shebegufo on the father. The mitzvah shebegufo is on the child. But we learned in this sugya that who's the one who really takes the first, mantle responsibility? Something just stopped here. I don't know. Who takes it says streaming is bad. Who takes the responsibility is the father. So I would think that this, based on Tosas Rid's Hagdara, so it wouldn't fit. You should be able to have a shliach perform the Milah. Okay, so Lenny mentions the Ravad Yosef, which says, of course, in a scenario where the father is a inexperienced moel, everyone would agree, if you're inexperienced, you shouldn't be operating on anyone, let alone your own son. Definitely mommy's going to say, I don't trust you, daddy, I'm going to go get a professional moel to do the job. So that's definitely one way of getting out of it, but it's just I was trying to figure out within the Tosas Rid's Hagdara, how do we explain Milah? Set aside Kisei Adam. Kisei Adam I don't understand altogether. It seems to be anyone should be able to do the Kisei Adam. So I'm just going to suggest that maybe one could suggest that if the whole reason for Milah is, like we said, like the Rambam says, that it's really to start the moral education of the child, to let them know that we don't fully indulge in our sexual desires, and that the Jew is asked to curb their sexual drive and be able to elevate their sexual drive, and it's a mark of kedusha. And it's not just the idea of the chinuch that's distinctiveness. It's really a chinuch thing about our relationship towards sexuality. Perhaps one can suggest that maybe the mitzvah shebegufo is that the father has the mitzvah of chinuch. I was just thinking about this idea today. Maybe, I'm just trying to make a little bit of stretch, maybe the reason the father, we're so, like Lenny was saying, we really want the dad to do it. Because when we think about the obligations of the father, we start the sugya in the first page with the obligation of what a father has to his son. So his obligation is to teach him Torah. His obligation is to do Milah. And if we view this as one package deal, that the father really has that main achrayus for teaching Torah, so he should also have the same achrayus for Milah as well. The Beis Halevi is a simple answer. The Beis Halevi says there are two nekudot, there are two different aspects of it. There's an element on the father, there's an element on the son, and what the Ksos HaChoshen or the Shach meant was only on the element that's mutal on the dad, not the part that's on the son. But I'm trying to say maybe a chiddush, that maybe because Milah is under the framework of chinuch, it's all part of the educational process, maybe that's how it's mutal, it's a mitzvah shebeguf on the dad. Otherwise, the hagdara of the Rid is still a little shver. It's not so simple to understand.
The thing that bothered me is that because it went up so many pages, it still felt that even after, of course, say, that you could have a Moabi or Sharia, that it was in still some way like it was Gerua, that the father wasn't getting as full of the mitzvah on himself. The way they wrote it, he's either your Shaliach, in which case it's still your mitzvah, or it's not. But they kind of twisted so much about it and made you feel that there was something Gerua on the father's mitzvah as soon as he made the moral his Shaliach.
The way I understood it, though, was that your question is only when the father was a mohel. If I'm not a mohel, less amount the polig, I should not be trying to chop off the foreskin.
And it should be just as good a mitzvah on the father.
It doesn't say that though. It says it's a mitzvah ma'ula, that l'chachila, and so it's almost l'chachila b'di'evet.
It could be.
The father should do it b'di'evet, he can avoid the shliach.
Could be, but if you're not trained in Milah,
right.
You should not be.
So then you should say that simply. They went up to so many pages.
It didn't say that.
I can go back and look.
Very simple, very clear.
Especially the
I understood the original source, the Shach, was the original source who said it, clearly said it was talking about someone who is a Moel. That was clearly what the Shach said. It says, Demishu Moel Eina Rashai L'Tein B'no La'achil Moelo V'chayvu Batzol Moel Zumi D'Kisui. It said he was a Moel. Demishu Moel. That was the first line of the Shach. Everyone's counting on the Shach. The Ramah asked the Shach.
But look at the Beis Halevi, Rabbi, if you don't mind a minute. He says that there's a mitzvah ma'ula on every father, not if he's a mite, on every father.
Right, so the Beis Halevi, I think, was a very simple explanation. The Beis Halevi was saying, and what the Shach meant was only regarding the chiyuv on the av. There are two chiyuvim. There's the chiyuv on the ben and the chiyuv on the av. So regarding the chiyuv on the av, so it's better to do it yourself. No, I'm reading it. I think we can shut up the thing.